Growing up, my two older sisters and I had always been a mismatch. As the youngest by a margin of nearly a decade, our interests, outlooks, and lifestyles diverged dramatically over the years. I was focused on building a professional career and choosing a child-free life with my wife, while my sisters chose to be stay-at-home moms. They leaned heavily on their husbands' incomes and, as it turned out, leaned even more on my parents' time and resources. This difference became the source of growing resentment between us. While my wife and I focused on saving, investing, and building our future, my sisters and their husbands focused on living for the present, accumulating debt and material possessions they couldn't quite afford. My parents, too kind-hearted to refuse, often ended up supporting them financially and with time spent on their childcare needs. It wasn't long before this generosity extended to using the family's vacation home, a property I'd quietly purchased for my parents to enjoy. I never wanted my sisters to know I was the actual owner, hoping to avoid the drama that eventually unfolded. One summer, things reached a breaking point. My parents invited us to a 4th of July barbecue at their home. Knowing my sisters, their husbands, and their kids would be there, I was hesitant to go. My wife and I valued our privacy and avoided these gatherings, preferring peaceful weekends to the noisy chaos that family gatherings inevitably brought. But after a bit of pressure from my mom, who longed for a full family gathering, my wife and I agreed to attend. When we arrived, it was clear that my sisters and their husbands had already had a few too many drinks. They were loud, accusatory, and quick to criticize us for arriving late and not wearing swimsuits. My sisters' children, energetic, to say the least, were running wild around the pool, much to my mom's dismay as she tried to keep them under control. About 45 minutes into the gathering, the kids pushed one of the older guests into the pool. She stumbled, half-soaked, before she managed to get out without causing a scene. But the incident encouraged the kids, who started running toward me with the same intent. Anticipating what they were up to, I stepped aside just in time. The children missed their target, running straight into the deep end of the pool. They emerged, coughing and spluttering, setting off a wave of hysteria from my sisters, who scolded me for letting them nearly drown. The scene was chaotic. Their iPhones had ended up at the bottom of the pool, and one of my brothers-in-law attempted a drunken rescue mission to retrieve them, only to fail. Frustrated, I calmly told my sisters it was their job to watch their kids. Things escalated from there, with harsh words flying until my wife and I decided to leave, ending what was supposed to be a simple barbecue in bitter discord. The weeks following the barbecue were marked by a steady stream of calls, texts, and attempts at contact from my sisters, their husbands, and eventually my parents. My mom, despite her best efforts to keep the peace, seemed torn between her loyalty to my sisters and the frustrations that I had laid bare at the barbecue. The ongoing drama led my parents to make a firm decision. They announced that my sisters' families would be banned from using the vacation house, which had become their go-to getaway. What followed was nothing short of a storm. My sisters, now enraged, tried every avenue to gain access to the vacation house. They even came to our home unannounced, spinning a story about needing the house for the kids. They pushed the idea that I should help with their children's college funds because, in their words, family sticks together. This wasn't just about using the vacation home. They felt entitled to my resources as well, pushing for financial assistance I had never agreed to. Things hit a new low one weekend when I got a frantic call from the property manager I had recently hired to maintain and secure the vacation house. It turned out my brothers-in-law had broken into the property, damaging the front door and cutting through the padlocked gate. Their excuse? They were taking a family getaway and were shocked to find the police waiting for them as they exited the house. They had been caught in the act and were promptly arrested, facing charges for breaking and entering, property damage, and trespassing. With that, a choice lay before me. I could either pursue legal action, demanding reparations and ensuring they faced consequences, or I could let it go, sparing my family further embarrassment. After a long conversation with my wife, I decided to move forward with legal action, refusing to drop the charges unless they agreed to a formal settlement that barred them from accessing the property. My parents, horrified by their actions but deeply distressed by the resulting family rift, tried to broker peace. My mom, ever the mediator, pleaded for leniency, but I held my ground. After years of enduring my sister's disrespect, I saw this as the final straw. For the first time, I refused to compromise. Eventually, my brothers-in-law sent an apology letter, along with a cashier's check for the damages, which barely covered half the repair costs. They begged me to drop the charges, fearing the impact on their jobs, one of which required a security clearance. After consulting with my attorney, I agreed to settle, requiring an additional payment to cover attorney fees and a written promise of no further contact. While the legal battles simmered down, the emotional toll persisted. My parents tried to smooth things over with the hope that, one day, we might all gather together again as a family. But for me, the damage was irreparable. I could no longer see my sisters as mere nuisances or frustrating family members. They were a toxic presence I needed to leave behind. In the months that followed, I built new boundaries with my family. My parents occasionally kept me updated on my nieces and nephews, and they continued to see the children at their homes, but the vacation house remained a separate sanctuary, one they could visit without the interference of my sisters. My wife and I reclaimed our peace, finding solace in the decision to finally distance ourselves from the entitled, endless demands of my family. Reflecting on the journey, I realized the emotional burden I had carried for years. I had tried to uphold a relationship with my siblings for the sake of family unity, but I understood that sometimes letting go is the only path to preserving one's own peace. This experience, however painful, reinforced the importance of boundaries and the freedom that comes from prioritizing the well-being of those who truly respect and value you. In the end, I found peace not in reconciliation, but in knowing I had finally stepped out of the shadows of family obligation and into a life defined by mutual respect, integrity, and authenticity.